Hey everybody, I'm just here. Want to do a quick overview of the of of my game and the progress of my game. Before I get started, I want to give a little thank you for the Legend Bowl community and King Havo. They've done a lot to help support me and make sure that they've done a lot to support me and make me actually, follow through with producing this game. And I know a lot of them are working on right now. They're working on getting the console version out this week. Hopefully that all goes really well. I really want to just kind of give a quick overview, kind of go through some of the game mechanisms, why I made the decisions that I made for this game, and so you can kind of, when you get your hands on it, you can play it and have some idea of how some of the systems work. Um, in general, first, this is a fantasy management game, fantasy football management game. The game is mostly based on football. It's management, so you are controlling your teams, getting players, moving them around on your team, but you're not actually controlling the game. You're watching the game like a lot of other management games. And so it's a lot like the Legend Bowl Championship League that we use for Legend Bowl, where you go, you pick your players, and you pick your teams, and you pick your lineups, and you get them all set up. But then the games play out, and you watch them, right? And so and also the rules are a little different. It's mostly based on American football, but I wanted to take other sports into account and use some of the good things from other sports like basketball, soccer, baseball, even, and kind of based a little bit on Blood Bowl too. Kind of using all these things to create a new game, unique experience, but that still captures a lot of the essence of football itself. So it's 8 versus 8. Use fantasy races. Players play both sides of the ball, and there's some reasons for that. There are three major things that I focus on in this game. One is on stats. So I wanted to be able to have a game where it generates a lot of stats that are really well balanced amongst each other, and you'll maybe see that when we kind of go over some stats from my league and what I mean by that. I also wanted to create so a lot of stats management in here. Second thing, I wanted to create a game that's fun to watch. When you watch it, you should enjoy watching it like we do with Legend Bowl Championship League. We all enjoy watching Legend Bowl, watching football in general. So I want to create a game that's fun to watch. But the one difference I have with this, I want it to be in more bite-sized pieces where you can watch a full game in a short period of time. Like in my game, it's 10 minutes. Plays run one after the other really fast. That way you can see a lot of things happening in a very short period of time and watch a complete game really quickly and watch multiple games really quickly. And then thirdly, the big thing that I want to focus on is player personality. And that's part of using the fantasy races helps with that. But in general, I have a lot of things already in there to help with player personality, and that's going to be, other than of course just UI fixing and maybe some graphical fixes. Most of what I really want to put in next is going to be more and more stuff to increase player personality, and that's why the 8 versus 8 and players playing both sides of the ball really helps with that, because you really get to know your players. You know your stars a lot, much like basketball, where you have several stars, all the stars on your team, whereas teams like football, unless you're a really diehard fan, a lot of times you don't know a lot of your team, and in here the purpose is for you to know that. So that's just kind of the general overview. So let me take you through some of the game. So first what we're going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to load up one of my leagues, go through some of the different screens on here, show you a game, how that works, and then at the end we'll pull up a new league so you can see some of the off-season stuff that takes place. And so we kind of go through that for today. So first, let me load up my league. And so we're going to use my league here. And we have schedule, roster, stats, and history. I'm actually going to start with history real quick. This is a little unique feature, I think, here for my game. Is that when you click on history, right now I don't have it broken down to where you can look at each season individually. It's just a large file that sort of holds your entire league's history. I'll probably have it where it'll break this up so you can kind of see seasons at a time more easily. but you can see here that this is constantly capturing different things from your leagues. Like here you can see this is my league. I'm actually on season 7, but this is season 6. You can see the top free agents, the top draft. You can see at the end of the season it lists all the award winners. It keeps track of who won all pro, all offensive team, all defensive team. It tracks the playoffs. It shows who won in the playoffs. It keeps track of who were the best players on the teams in the playoffs. And then you can see season 7 starts, and then so what I'm showing you is in the middle of season 7, so you can see season 7 started. But the other thing that I added in here, it's a text file. You can go in, you can mess with it. You don't have to worry about formatting, but you can also edit the history. So, for example, you say, oh, here something big happened in one of the games, and you want to remember it, and you want it to be recorded in your history. You can say like here, Pyth kills, Fred in the championship. So you can put that in there. Pyth kills Fred in the championship. You hit save history, and now at the end of your history file, it kind of lists that in there. And so you can, if you have a big event, a big free agent signing, or a big move, or a big weekly event that happens, or a big player gets hurt, or whatever, you can sort of record that and have that in this history. So when you look back at that year, you'll be, oh, remember when this happened, and it'll sort of record that and keep that for you. So that's one thing that I think will, it's kind of unique that you don't see in other games, and that we're going to be able to do, that you'll be able to do here with this game. Okay, so let's first take you into the roster so we can explain a little bit about the players. And so here you can see the roster screen. We'll kind of take you through the layout of this and some of the things you can see on here. But first thing you can see up here on the right-hand side, you can see the coach. Here you see the team, the logo, and then here you see the player that is highlighted, so you can click through and see the different players on the team. I'll first go through the coach. The coach here you can see always on this side. It shows there are two big things you see on the coach. One, you can see the draft preferences. This is how the coach is really there just for controlling the AI decisions. And so in the draft, if you're drafting for your team or for a team, then this really doesn't matter. But if the coach is going to draft, or the computer's going to draft for you, this shows sort of what positions they like to draft and sort of the relationship. So the differences between these are utilized to determine what position they like to draft. And they'll still draft for team needs. They'll still try to draft players at the top of the draft, but when having to make those decisions, they'll lean basically based on these different values on what they draft for. The second thing is coaching tendencies. You'll see in here, obviously, this is during the game, decisions that are made. And so there's 3 major decision points in a play. One is whether they're going to call run or pass. The other one is whether your running backs, your runners, the ones that aren't carrying the ball, are they going to go out on pass routes, or are they going to stay back and protect, a block? And so that's another big decision. And then another decision is what the linebacker is going to do, whether the linebacker is going to blitz, or whether the linebacker is going to stay out and cover or double team. And so this kind of controls some of those decisions for those players. And so that's what the coach does. Okay, so let's talk about the players. So you can see here over the ratings. The ratings are color-coded, right? In this game, white is actually average, so 50 is average. For example, a human player, you can see all the different races over here. A human player is, their stats are typically, unless they get some extreme boost, which can happen in this game, they are going to be between 25 and 75 in each ability. So maximum for a human is 75 in an ability. So, being in the 60s and 70s is high. So it's a good number. So a lot of games kind of inflate everything where everybody's in the 70s and 80s, and that's not like this in this game. So you'll have players in the 20s and 30s for some abilities, and that's perfectly normal, and it's based around that. So you'll see the sort of the stat distribution here, and so I'll run through these grayed out stats that you see. These are calculated stats. These are ratings that are based on the actual stats of the player. So you can see here the stats are speed, strength, agility, stamina, tackle, block, and so on. And so I'll go through these in just a minute, but these are the actual stats. And then these right here are averages or ratings kind of based on these. They're not averages, but based on these, how good these players are at these positions. You can see like this guy's a 90 cover. He doesn't have any purple ratings, but based on compared to other players in the league, this guy is a very good cover guy, right? I'm sorry, very good gunner guy. So you can kind of take a look at that. And so let me explain these ratings first. So the first one is overall rating. And so this is a weighted rating. Again, it's weighted kind of comparatively to others in the league. And this rating, you can see if you take a look, like speed has a value of 4, whereas something like durability I have as a value of 1. And so this is the value that's there is overall value that's what that value is based on their overall value. Things like passing are only used by runners, so a defensive player for their defensive rating really doesn't matter for them. So that's why this only has a value of 1, where speed is really important for every position, right? And so this overall is a kind of a weighted average of these guys, and so that's what that is. Then you have your offensive rating, defensive rating. This is just rating their offensive and defensive stats in general, but really these are the big ones, and these are the ones I want to explain because these are the different positions in the game. So first you have a runner position, and runner is the one that's going to be the most different from what you've seen in regular football, because in my game you have 3 runners, and they must rotate at the quarterback position. So you cannot have the same, and part of this is because one of this is generating stats, but also sort of like the sort of baseball mentality here, where you have a guy that gets put pressure, they come up to bat, and they're the one that comes up to bat, and instead of having one player that can do that and needing only one good quarterback, only one good player, or only needing one good running back, you're really forced to have 3 good players that are playing that position. If you want to be successful. So you might have 1 great player but 2 bad players, and so your team's going to vary a lot by that. So it prevents you from just feeding the ball to one person. It sort of makes you have to spread it out between a little bit more, and involve all the different players on your team, as not just as blockers or some filler position, but they're really going to handle the ball. And so that's how the runners do it. So this is the runner rating. Gunners are going to be 2 runners. These are basically your typical receivers in the game. And so they'll go out to obviously catch passes and also some blocking. And then, of course, your blockers. These are guys who are going to stand and block, right? So these are your linemen. You have 3 linemen in the game. So you have 3 linemen, 2 gunners, and 3 runners on the offense. On defense, you have they're kind of pretty typical. You have 3 defensive linemen, and so those are obviously going to go after the ball carrier initially, the quarterback. You have 3 linebackers, and so linebackers are your kind of mid, just like they are in real football. They can sort of kind of do all sorts of things on the field, and then your covers, which are going to cover man-to-man on the gunners. So these are going to be direct head-to-head matchups with the gunners, the cover guys. Now, the linebackers can double team. The linebackers can go into zone, so they can help those cover guys. But in general, you're going to have your cover is going to be covering your gunners on your typical plays. And so those are the general positions. Now, this then leads to this. What is the computer uses as the most important stat as far as determining who starts for the team, and that is the starter rating. And so the starter rating is basically, it's a little more complex than this. I had to do a lot of tweaking to sort of figure out a good way to get the computer to pick the right people to put on the team. But it's basically choosing their best offensive position and their best defensive position and averaging those. It's not quite that simple. But that's basically what it's doing. And that's because if you have a guy who's, say, 50 in everything, they're going to be pretty decent at all stuff, but they're not going to really excel at anything. And so, hey, Havos, nice to see you on there. And so they're not going to really excel at anything. What the starter rating is trying to do is trying to say, but you may have another player who's, say, a 20 in runner, a 20 in gunner, but a 99 blocker. Well, you're going to want that guy to play because on offense, they're going to be 99 blocker. That's going to be fantastic. And they don't need to run the ball or pass the ball. So that's going to be really fantastic. So you're going to want to have that player playing the game. And so that's what the starter rating really does. Try to pick out guys that are going to really excel at one position or other on offense or defense. And so that's how it chooses who the starters are going to be. Um, so going through the stats and what they mean, I'm not going to talk too long on these because you can hover over them. You can find them out when you're messing with the game. But speed is obviously how fast they run. Strength is used so once a tackle or a block hits, then strength is used to determine what happens with that hit, whether the player gets knocked down or slowed down or something. And so strength plays a really big role in those things. It also helps receivers, use their strength to push away defenders, knock down defenders that are trying to guard them. Agility is used for a lot of different things, preventing knockdowns, allowing people to stay up, allows them to get up after being knocked down. Stamina is a per play thing. So stamina, your energy resets each play, and so it's really how much you can accomplish in a play before you start getting tired. This is really important for your runners. Less important for everybody else on the team. So the people who have the ball, it's really important for them. But you'll see players will get gassed out and start to lose their abilities, and so you'll see that visually in the game when that starts to happen. But again, those are per play. So the more you do on a single play is how it's going to be affected. Tackle is your ability to connect with the tackle, and then after you connect with that tackle, strength and agility and all are used to see what happens with that tackle. Block is your ability to connect with a block, and then again, strength and agility used for beyond that. Dodge is your ability to avoid a tackle, so it's a direct opposition of tackle. Break block is the direct opposition of block, so ability to not get hit by the block. Hands is for catching and defending passes, and so it's used for both of those. Passing is really only used for the ball handler and the quarterback, person playing at the quarterback position for that down, and so it's used for accuracy of passes. It's also used to get the ball into tight windows, get past defenders. Vision is mostly used by the passer as well to see open receivers, but it's also used by defensive players to avoid getting juked. Agility also helps with juking. And then brutality is your ability to injure another player, and then durability is your ability to avoid being injured, right? And so injuries are a big part of this game. Injuries work a little differently. All injuries cause stat losses, permanent stat losses, and players can die, so they are permanent in this game. And so these are going to be permanent stat losses that you're going to see, and so they're really important for the long-term health of your team to not get injured. Because they do cause these things to happen. So that's basically the rundown. This shows what position they're playing on offense, what position they're playing on defense, how long they've been here, their salaries. So you can see all that. Now, the really complicated thing to explain on the screen, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but is how do you alter depth charts? Because this is a real problem when you have a lot of games, especially football games, but it's even worse in this game because players are playing different positions on offense than they are on defense. And so it can be really complicated. And so just your standard depth chart, really, I went through trying different ways to think about this. It doesn't work well. So the way we use this is that you can alter the depth values. So the computer uses these values here to determine who's going to start and where they're going to be in the team. But you can use these altered depth values. It doesn't change the actual player's ability. It just changes these values. And so it changes how the computer thinks about the player. And so if you say, hey, I want this guy right here, this little gnome, he's not starting. He's because his starter rating isn't high enough. I want to make sure he starts. So you can go to alter depth value. You can go to that guy. And I better put on my glasses for this. So we can go and we can find the little gnome that's not starting here. We can click on him, and then we can increase his starter value. You see down here, he's on the bench. And as I increase his starter value, now he's actually starting. Now he's moved up, and he's starting, and the guy that was ahead of him is now below him, and now he's a runner and alignment. And you can do that for these positions as well. You'll see sometimes you're like, I really don't want this guy, even though he's rated really high in this position. I want to have him play something else. You can change your value. You can say, well, this guy's rated as a runner, but I really don't want him to run. I want him to block, or I want him to be a gunner. And so you can drop that rating, that value, so that he doesn't start or doesn't do that. So you can go through and you can play with these things, and it'll show you where they get moved around to. So you can alter how the computer thinks about the player and where they put them in for the game. These values will stay with the player as long as they're on your team. If they move to another team, then those values get reset. But as long as, so you don't have to go through and change these every week. You just change them one time, and your team will rate that player higher. It's also really important because you have injuries and all, and so as those injuries and all occur, the computer has to make game time decisions to try and determine, which of these things is, which of the decisions, which of the players should be playing which positions, and and a depth chart really doesn't work well for that. So these values is the way you do it. So it may take a little bit getting used to when you're playing with it, but I think it works really well. We see that, we've been playing. My son really likes to micromanage his teams, but we've been seeing that he maybe changes one or two players each season, their ratings, just to tweak them and make them play a different position. Most of the time, I see this with the really great players. They're great at everything, and so the computer will stick them in something that the team needs the most. But he might be like a 80 runner, a 90 gunner, and a 75 blocker. But you have a bunch of terrible blockers on your team, so it puts him in at blocker. Just because you don't have any blockers, and you're like, nah, I want to make sure he's playing the gunner position, so you can drop his blocker rating. So again, it doesn't affect the play on the field; it just affects the way the computer thinks about them. So hope that, and you can kind of flip through. You can also see the way this is a mature league. It's already in its 7th season, so you can see how the ratings work out. Most players are in the green, so they're just a little bit above 50%, right? But you'll have some standouts on some teams, but a lot of teams don't have these purple standouts. So they're really fantastic players. They're rare, and so you seldom have 99 players on teams. They're pretty rare, and even if a player is 99, they still have plenty of room for growth. They're not necessarily 99 in everything. That's just sort of their general average, and so you can sort of see how this stuff sort of works. And here shows. One other thing I'll point out on this screen: how salaries are calculated. Salaries spent. The way the salary sort of system works in this game is that only your top 10 players each game count towards your salary. So any players that aren't in the top 10, so we assume your 8 starters and then 2 guys that might come in for injury, so we just cut it off at 10, that those players will count towards your salary each game. And so at the end of the season, it adds up your salary for each of the games, and it uses that to determine who has the highest and lowest salary rank. The way salary rank works is a lot like Legend Bowl when we developed it, so it works like that in there. Here you can also see, here's a dead guy. So this is what happens when a guy dies. So this team has a dead guy on it, and so you can sort of flip through and see the different guys here. All right, so next up, let me now go through and show you the stats screen real quick. And so you can kind of see the different stats on here. Let me real quick, I just want to make sure, this is the first time I've used YouTube Live. I want to make sure everything is running okay. Okay, yeah, I just want to double check everything's running okay because I have it in the background here. All right, so going back to here. And so this is showing you the stat screen. Here we have the offensive stats, and this is for just one game this season, but I want to show you what I mean by balanced. If you take a look, the way I wanted to have it is I want to have it where offense and defenses earns a similar amount of fantasy points, that passing, running, and receiving all are pretty equally weighted. And so you'll see this just as one game. I'll show you the career stats. You can see the same thing with them. So you take here, just look at the fantasy offense here. How many points are getting for fantasy points for offense? 64 down to 23. If we look at defense, it's almost the same, 63 down to 22. So you can see a pretty good spread. So you're weighting sort of the impact of the offensive and defensive player for their overall total fantasy points, which you see over here. On both of these on offensive defense. And then you have like passing yards. You can see passing yards, rushing yards here, and receiving yards. You can see pretty close. Rushing yards, passing yards, receiving yards, passing yards. They're all pretty close. Again, so it makes it so, I try to balance the stats so that they're all sort of equally weighted. And then also you can sit here and you can see, look at career, and so you can click on career and you can see in this career you can see fantasy offense and number of these different things, these different stats we have on here. The other thing I also wanted to balance is I want to give love to my offensive linemen. is that I keep track of pancake stats, and pancakes are much more frequent in this game than they would be in regular football, because whenever there's a collision between the two, there's often knockdowns, more often than you probably see in a normal football game, and each knockdown is considered a pancake, and an offensive player can repeatedly pancake a player over and over again. So you can rack up tons of pancakes if you're just mashing players all over the field. And so you'll see when you look at all-time fantasy offensive points, you can see here the top guy is a runner, a guy who's mostly a runner. Then you see the second guy is a guy who's mainly a receiver. Then you see a bunch of mixed sort of runners and passers. Here, this guy's mainly a passer. And then, but you see the seventh in my league, seventh all-time offensive player is an offensive lineman because of all his pancakes, right? So I wanted to make it balanced, and again, we want to get personality, and personality applies to all positions, not just the quarterback or not just the big running back. And so I want to make sure we sort of have that. And you can see the fantasy points all time, the second best player all time is an offensive lineman because he's great on defense and he's really fantastic on offense as well. So that's one of the big things I kind of kept in mind with running these stats. So you can see there's a ton of stats here. You can go to team stats. This is looking at team all-time stats. You can take a look at how many times they've been to the playoffs, how many championships they've won, stuff like that. Look at their overall yards. You can see rushing yards, 1,400 to 4,000. Passing yards is slightly higher for that first team, but overall still pretty similar. So you see run and pass pretty equal to each other, and so I did that and sort of intentionally. And then you can look at the season stats right here. It keeps track of injuries and kills and other things as well for each of the teams and each of the players. So that is sort of the rundown of stats. So real quick, let's go ahead and take a look at a game. I'm not going to spend a ton of time running a full game. I'll show you how it works and get through one, but not going to run the whole game in normal speed. But I do want to show you a few things. Here's our league screen, so you can see all the matchups. It kind of shows who's playing, their ratings, scoring, total, rush, pass, offense, same for defense. You can kind of see these in here. I'm going to take two teams. I decided to pick two teams that I know are really good offensive teams, so we'll see the ball move around a little bit. So let's go ahead and watch the old ones versus the Spectres. Pick that game. You click on the game, you can sort of see it. It shows who's playing each other. You can see there's a couple of the top offenses in the league, and it highlights their top players, what positions they play, and what they are. And you can see they have a bunch of really good runners on these teams. These are the best runners in the league on these two teams. So then you go ahead and you start the game. And so once you start the game, I'm going to go ahead and hit a pause so we can take a look at a few different things that I want to point out. When you look at the different players, you can see there's a bunch of icons on the players. These icons are basically their skills at that position. So star is basically their overall rating. A foot means how good they are at running. A hand is how good they are at catching the ball. A shield is how good they are at blocking. On defense, you'll see this little hand for tackling. And then there's this one right here. Here's a little sort of minus symbol. This is for covering and how well you are locking down and locking down a receiver. And so it'll highlight these if you're in the blue, so that means you're in the 70s, or if you're in the purple, if you're above 85. So it'll highlight these for each player, and it does it based on if they're on offense or defense. So if you're on offense, it's only going to highlight the offensive stats. If you're on defense, it's only going to highlight the defensive stats. The other thing you can see is these little trophies. These are awards they've won, so it keeps track, and it kind of shows up. Again, trying to highlight player personality. It shows sort of the awards that they've won for this. Shows that this guy is a big award winner. He just threw a pick, so not a great start for him. But you can sort of see the different players and what they're doing here, and you can see the little trophies that they have. And so let me pause it again back on this guy. You can see he has different. There's a gold trophy for MVP, so he's never won MVP, but he's got 2 silver trophies on offense. So that means he's won Offensive Player of the Year twice. And then these are going to be either Offensive Player of the Year or All-Pro. And then it only shows these things based on, so these stars, this guy, they're either defensive awards or they're All-Pro awards, right? And so it kind of helps you to see who the good players are at the different positions. So you can really highlight and zone in on some of the star players and watch them during the game, and you know who the star players are. And so that's a big reason why I have that on here. And yeah, I see that, Havo. I will. I will. That's a good idea. I'll go ahead and chat about my plans for the game. Um, and so so that's sort of what that's there for. You can sort of see over here, kind of a summary for each player, what's going on, and sort of it's the basic stuff here. And you can so I'll go ahead and let the gameplay play real quick and kind of see what's going on. My overall plans for the game, I plan to eventually, I'm going to release it probably fairly soon in an open beta on itch, and then eventually plan to release it for Steam and on itch. My initial thought is I'm going to make it a free-to-play game with maybe a little supporter DLC. So that because I want to, this is really a hobby for me. And so I really just want to share this game and have people have fun with it. I want to take more sort of the Dwarf Fortress sort of route of things, do something you're passionate about and share it with everybody. And if later it makes some money, great. But it's really, I'm doing this more as a passion project. And so I really want to let people have access to this game. And if they like it, then hopefully they'll support me, and I can do more things with the game if I get a little bit of support for it. So that's my general idea. And sort of the overall layout of how the game works is already all here. I don't plan to make this a game where you're going to be able to control the players or anything ever. I might have a little more coaching ability in the game at some point. I don't know. I'm debating on that. But none of that will likely change for the game. So that's kind of just a little general overview of where I plan to go with this. And so it's going to be something that I'll probably have continually in sort of an open beta for quite a long time, and then eventually, once I get a lot of feedback and folks enjoy it, I'll eventually make it sort of a release version. But it'll probably be something I'll always be adding little tweaks to it and messing with, because it's a game that I like to play. My family, we've had a lot of fun playing this game. We've already had over 10 seasons of leagues, and so we've been having a lot of fun with it. And so I just want to share that fun and have other people having fun with it too. So you can see this game plays out. A couple other things you can notice with the game. All the animations were done by me, so they look kind of a little janky. I might work on them a little bit. I might update some of the graphics a little bit. They've grown on me. I think a lot of the player graphics look kind of funny and cute on the face. Now the hair and mustaches and all, those are from an asset that I got, but most everything else I did. And so I'll probably work on them a little bit, make them nicer, but they're functional enough. You can see what's going on. And so hopefully you can sort of, it's functional enough for you to enjoy watching the games and seeing what's going on. So I don't want to spend too much time. You can sort of see what's going on. You can see the little Z's popping up. This is when a player starts to get tired. You can see the little juke moves there as the guy's getting through the line. You can see, one of the things you'll notice is that I try to emphasize a lot of things like pancakes and all, because I really want to kind of make it obvious what's going on in the field, what's happening, what the computer's doing, what the players are doing. So I have a lot of those, a lot of that stuff you see in Legend Bowl. I've just made it a little bit more in this game. And so you can sort of see what's actually happening with the players. So that's gameplay. Another big thing I want to point out is the way the game simulates is that you can change game speed anytime. So you can slow it down to slow-mo mode, or you can speed it up, make it go faster. And the fastest rate that I run the game at is 20x. Could probably go a little higher than that, but when I was running at 50x, I was starting to get some jankiness in the stats, and I didn't want that. I want the stats to be exactly the same. So you can run through an entire game. So midway through the game, you want to get it over with quick, you just hit that fast forward button and it goes through. And then at the end of the game, it has a little summary screen with a couple of little summary things. You go and you get to the next game, right? You could simulate the entire week, but the way the simulations work in this game, again, because I want the simulated games to be identical to the played games, is that when you hit simulate week, it's going to simulate all the games and it's going to simulate them rapidly. But it's going to take a while. It's going to take a few minutes to simulate an entire week. But you'll be able to see it sort of playing out in the background. and so you'll be able to see that in the background as you're watching the game. It'll show you injuries pop up, so you can see who got injured in the game as it's going. But you'll basically run through those simulations. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the game here. It auto saves at the end of each game, so I'm going to go ahead and close it out, and I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to show you us starting a new league. So pop this up here. Hopefully you guys should be able to see everything, and I'm going to run a new league here. So here I'm going to yeah, I know it's sometimes fun to be able to get through that really quickly. I know I've you get kind of bored when you're getting killed in a game and you have to watch the whole thing. So that's one of the reasons why I really made sure I had that in there. I haven't played Legend Bowl a ton. Last I played was maybe about 2 months ago. We have another league we're running too. Me and my family, we run a Legend Bowl league. And so we still love Legend Bowl. I can't wait to check out all the new features. That it seems like there's a lot of awesome improvements. But I've had a really busy fall for one, and so I had a lot of things going on. I wasn't even able to work on this game as much. But I finally, over the break, I decided, you know what, I'm gonna finish this game off and get it out so people can start having fun with it. So I moved on to doing that. All right. So, but yeah, I still plan to play Legend Ball. I think it's a fantastic game, and it's what inspired me to do this. Okay, so starting a new league is pretty simple. You just click New League, and then you type in the name. So, what I just call it Live League or something. And you start the league. And so what first happens is it goes through and you go through coaches. So it assigns a coach to each team, and then it allows you to pick from one of 3 coaches. There's a coaching pool. Only 3 of those coaches in the coaching pool want to be on your team, and so you can kind of look through and you can kind of pick. And you have complete control over all teams. Because there isn't a ton, that you can just control all the teams, one or as many as you want. If you don't want to control the team, you just let the computer do it. So you can click through and let the computer do it, and you get to your team, whatever team it is. I want to be the Guardians. Then you go to the Guardians, and you kind of look through it, and you decide who you want for your coach, right? And so you can kind of go through that. And we've explained the coaches a little earlier in the video. But again, these are mostly AI preferences, and it keeps some stats for the coach. So you go through the first thing when you click these, get your create a new league, is you get all your coaches picked, right? And then after you click through all your coaches, let all the coaches pick, then you have the draft. And so here's the draft screen. And you can see this is for a complete league, so you can see all the different players up here. They're rated by their starter rating. So you can see an entire league. There's no players in the 90s for a new league, and not a lot of players. So there's a big spread in these different players, big differences in their abilities. And I will say that in this game, I would say player ability matters a lot more than in most other games, probably because it's 8 versus 8, just like in basketball. The players are more impactful when it's a smaller team, but these players are much more impactful. You'll see a star player will really be a star. You'll see them usually show up pretty well for the league. And so again, you can say, I want to go ahead and draft for the Ice Dragons. You can draft yourself, or you can let the computer pick and let the computer select the players. Down here, you'll see, since it's the first season that I'm doing here, as we go through, we'll see the roster starting to fill down here as you're picking players, so you can see what you have and how good your team is at these different positions. And so there will be a little roster. If after the first season, this roster will be full, and so as you draft, you'll put people on the roster. And so that's sort of what will happen. And then you can sim the entire draft. You hit sim the entire draft, and it quickly sims the entire draft. And then now we can look at the rosters, and we can see all the different players that were drafted. And you can kind of flip through and take a look at all the different teams, see their ratings, see who went where, and all this sort of other stuff, and fix that. So you can see a lot of standard stuff there for you to mess with a when you create a league and you have all the sort of bells and whistles you normally have. The last little thing that I want to show you is I'll show you free agency. The free agency is a lot like Hava and I talked a lot about free agency for Legend Bowl, and so it's basically using the same system that we used in Legend Bowl. And so I'm going to load a league. I'm going to load my free agent test league. And so here, this is already free agency, and this is a lot like Legend Bowl. I need to make this screen a little prettier, but basically, you are offered a choice. You have 3 players. You can either, like this one, they have one to drop. So out of these 3 players, they have to drop one of the 3. You can see that how much they're being paid, right? This is how much they get paid per game, and what the salary rank. So the higher your salary rank, so the closer you are to 1, the more likely you are to lose more players in free agency. The lower you are, the less likely you are to lose players in free agency. And if you're trying to decide between these 3, you can look at your roster and you can see these are the 3 guys who are up for free agency. You can see where they are on your team, and you can decide which one you want to drop. And you say, okay, well, this Contucci or whatever, I'm going to drop this dude. And so you just click on him and he gets dropped. And then it goes on to the next team, same thing. This one's a drop, this one's a drop. This one, you only get to keep 1 player. So out of these 3, you get to decide which one you want to keep. And I guess we'll keep this dude. He looks like a 70. We'll keep this guy. And so you kind of go through that for each of the teams. Again, you don't have to do it for yourself. You can only do it for the teams that you want, and you can let the computer decide and go through the entire free agency itself. And then it has a little summary screen that summarizes all the free agents. Oh, also, like Legend Bowl, right now I don't have a confirmation screen. I'll probably do something like what Havo did for Legend Bowl for the confirmation. I don't have that right now, but they automatically, mainly because you don't have to worry about giving up players as much as you do in football and Legend Bowl, because you have a pretty large roster. But so most people would want to take these players. They wouldn't want to not have them. But it basically automatically assigns the players to their teams, to a new team that they get in free agency. And another thing that I'm going to go ahead and sim this draft real quick. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that you have team appeal. And so there are weekly events. I didn't mention the weekly events, but there are weekly events, and most of the weekly events are improvements. There's about 5 to 10 players that go up every week through just training. They go up randomly. It's not randomly, but it's based on their personality ratings. And so there's a bunch of soft personality ratings in the background that I forgot to mention. And so these are involved in all of the events, the weekly events that occur. And so you can have events like charity events. You can have scandals that can occur. You can have players fighting with each other. You can have players helping each other out. And so those things are all going to affect your team appeal. And so the higher your team appeal, the more likely free agents are going to sign with your team. So that's how free agents are assigned, based. It's mainly just random, but it is slightly based on team appeal. So the higher your team appeal, the more likely you are to get free agents. And so again, there's all these stats in the background. I think the next thing that I'm going to add, my main priority for the next edition is going to be to add badges for personality, because I don't want you to be able to see their personality in numbers. But I want, after a player gets into trouble several times, I want it to flag that player as this is a troublemaker. Or this guy is constantly asking for new contracts, so I want to flag this guy as a guy who's constantly asking for new contracts. He's greedy, right? Or this guy's really loyal. And so I want those flags to pop up. So the more events that show up, these guys can get little badges that say, hey, this guy's a greedy guy, or this guy's a hard worker, or this guy's a bad in the locker room. And so they're going to be badges that pop up for the players. Again, emphasizing that whole personality component. So that's a general run through of everything real quick, to give you an idea. Hopefully you can kind of, for those of you guys who are interested, just join the Discord. On the Discord, I'm getting, most people, once I get to know you, I'll gladly add you to a tester. Again, because eventually this is going to be free to play anyway. So I do want to get a lot of people in testing this out and seeing, letting them have fun with it and giving me some feedback on what things I should be doing to the game in the long run. So I guess that's about all. Unless anybody else has any other questions in the chat, thanks for coming, stopping by, guys. And I will go ahead and end it right now if we don't have anything else. Good luck, and again, join the Discord and let me know, give me your feedback, let me know what you think about the game, let me know. I'm glad to talk about things and I want to help design this together. So if there's other folks that have some input, I'd love to hear y'all's input on the game. So enjoy the rest of the playoffs, and good luck, Havo, with your console release. Hopefully that goes really well. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.